The courtroom doors swung open with a heavy thud, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio stepped inside, his arrival as the nation's top diplomat sending a ripple through the tense, crowded space. Judge Marshall Davis, perched atop his bench like a vulture over a fresh kill, jerked his head up from a stack of papers, his eyes narrowing into slits. "No coffee in my courtroom," he barked at his trembling clerk, a young woman whose hands shook as she clutched a clipboard, her face paling under his glare. Davis's voice was a jagged blade, cutting through the murmurs of the gallery before he turned his venom on Rubio. "And you don't think for a second that your fancy State Department title means a damn thing here, Rubio. In this room, I am the law, and you're nothing more than a guest under my roof." The gallery, overflowing with reporters scribbling notes, lawyers whispering strategies, and onlookers leaning forward in their seats, shifted uneasily, the air crackling with the promise of confrontation. Rubio, clad in a sharp, dark suit that mirrored his measured demeanor, offered a curt nod to the court staff, his expression calm but unyielding. "Crystal clear, Your Honor," he said, his voice steady as tempered steel, cutting through Davis's bluster with quiet authority. "I'm here as a witness to the truth, nothing more and nothing less." Davis sneered, his face flushing a deep crimson, his lips curling in disdain. "Truth? We'll see about that, Mr. Secretary. Don't expect me to roll out the red carpet for your version of it." Davis's eyes darted to the defense table, where a nervous attorney adjusted his tie, preparing to speak. "Let's get this circus started," Davis growled, his tone dripping with contempt. The attorney opened his mouth. "For the record." But Davis sliced through his words like a guillotine. "I'm sick to death of political grandstanding in my courtroom," he spat, his gaze drilling into Rubio with undisguised hostility. "This isn't your diplomatic playground, Mr. Secretary, where you can charm your way out of trouble." The attorney, undeterred but visibly rattled, tried again. "Your Honor, we're simply establishing the context of Mr. Sterling's charitable endeavors, which—" "Context?" Davis interrupted with a harsh, grating laugh that echoed off the wood-paneled walls. "Your client's accused of tax evasion, plain and simple. That's all the context I need or want. Spare me the sob story about his charity nonsense. I'm not here to hand out medals." Each time the attorney dared mention Sterling's good works, donations to local schools, support for struggling families, Davis's rage flared hotter. "Irrelevant!" he bellowed, slamming his fist on the bench with such force that a pen rolled off the edge and clattered to the floor. "Move on! I won't say it twice, and I won't waste my breath on bleeding heart excuses." His gavel crashed down repeatedly, a staccato rhythm of fury, the court reporter's fingers stumbling over her keys in a frantic attempt to keep pace. Rubio sat silently in the witness area, his diplomat's poise unshaken, his dark eyes tracking Davis's every move. He hadn't yet taken the stand, but the storm was gathering, and he was its calm center, waiting to unleash his rebuttal. When Rubio was finally summoned to the witness stand, Davis's temper erupted like a volcano. "Stand straight when you take the oath," he snapped, his voice cracking with irritation, though Rubio's posture was already impeccable, shoulders squared, head high, a picture of discipline honed by years in public service. "And speak clearly. No State Department doublespeak or bureaucratic jargon in my court." Rubio inhaled deeply, his chest rising and falling with deliberate calm, and began, Your Honor, I can attest to Mr. Sterling's financial transparency with the Faith and Family Foundation. His efforts have supported countless— Enough, Davis cut in, his voice quaking with barely contained fury, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the bench. I don't need your diplomatic fairy tales, Rubio, or your polished speeches about some do-gooder's saintly deeds. Rubio pressed on, his tone unruffled, his words deliberate. These are facts, Your Honor, not tales. Sterling's contributions, hundreds of thousands of dollars to community programs documented in public records, prove his integrity. I said enough. Davis's hands trembled violently now, his face a mask of frustration, as he clutched the edge of his bench, Rubio's unshakable resolve fraying his nerves to the breaking point. The gallery watched in rapt silence, sensing the judge's control slipping with every measured word from the Secretary of State. Davis was visibly coming apart, his fingers fumbling with a stack of papers in a desperate bid to hold his crumbling ground. In fact, he said, his tone taking on a manic, unhinged edge, I'm holding you in contempt right now, Rubio. You think your cabinet post, your little perch at the top of the State Department, protects you. From me, you're nothing but a Trump puppet in a tailored suit, parading around with your pompous title. Rubio didn't blink, his face a mask of composure forged through years of political battles. Your Honor, he said coolly, his voice a quiet thunder, my role as Secretary of State has no bearing on this proceeding. I'm not here to wield influence, only to present evidence. But since you mention protection, perhaps we should discuss the Liberty Foundation's protection payments, money flowing into your accounts to shield you from scrutiny. Davis's face drained of color in an instant, his eyes bulging with a mix of shock and dread. How dare you, he stammered, his words tripping over themselves as he struggled to regain footing. What payments? There's no such— Guards, remove this man from my courtroom immediately! The court officers hesitated, their boots rooted to the floor, exchanging uncertain glances as Davis's unraveling became impossible to ignore. Rubio reached into his briefcase with deliberate precision, pulling out a sheaf of papers. Actually, Your Honor, I have bank records right here. Monthly deposits from offshore accounts, curiously aligned with your rulings against conservative defendants. Care to explain those? Davis shrieked, his voice rising to a fevered pitch. Shut up! You've got no right, no authority. I'm the law here. Me, not some jumped-up diplomat. Rubio lifted a single document, holding it aloft like a banner. Your signature on these authorization forms says otherwise, Your Honor. It's your hand that signed off on this corruption. Davis lurched forward over the bench, his shaking finger jabbing at Rubio with wild desperation. You planted those. It's a setup, a conservative conspiracy to take me down. He froze mid-sentence, his breath catching, as he realized his own words had damned him further, exposing a crack in his facade too wide to conceal. A conspiracy? Rubio echoed, his voice soft but cutting through the chaos like a knife. That's an interesting choice of words, Your Honor, especially given your secret meetings with activist groups. Late-night discussions with those who'd pay to see certain voices silenced. Davis's face turned a deep, mottled purple, his rage boiling over. I won't be questioned in my own court, he roared, spit flying from his mouth, his judicial dignity dissolving into raw, animalistic fury. You waltz in here with your smug face, your pressed suit, and your evidence. He spat the word like it was poison, his hands clawing at the air. Evidence, Rubio said, steady as ever, his tone unshaken by the outburst. Like the Thompson case last month. A small business owner, a man who poured his life into his community, lost everything because you refused to let his charitable records see the light of day, all while your rulings favored those who lined your pockets. Davis's staff gaped in stunned silence, their eyes wide as their judge's descent into madness unfolded before them, a spectacle none had anticipated. "Which part troubles you, Your Honor?" Rubio's tone grew sharper now, his words honed to a fine edge. "The meetings with those shadowy figures, or the $100,000 that appeared in your offshore account the very next day?" The gallery hummed with shock, a wave of murmurs rippling through the crowd like wildfire. Davis hammered his gavel against the bench, each blow weaker than the last, a futile attempt to reclaim order. "Order! Order! I'll have order in this courtroom!" His voice broke, splintering into a high-pitched whine of panic. "It's all fake, a conservative plot to smear me." "Like Mrs. Anderson's case?" Rubio pressed, relentless, his voice rising just enough to pierce the din. "A grandmother, a widow living on a fixed income, lost her life savings because you silenced her chance to explain where her money came from. Odd, isn't it? How the company that sued her, a corporate giant with deep pockets, funded your re-election campaign just weeks before you handed them her future." Davis screamed, his composure shattered beyond repair. "Shut up! You've got no right, no authority. I'm the law here. Me, not you." "No, Your Honor," Rubio said, his calm slicing through the chaos like a beacon. "You're not the law. You're meant to serve it, to uphold it with honor. Or at least you were, until the day you took your oath and opened that Cayman account in the same breath, trading justice for greed." Davis staggered to his feet, his robes falling into disarray, his finger pointing wildly at Rubio as if he could banish him with sheer will. "Guards, arrest this man for contempt. Seize those papers, every last one of them, now." The guards remained still, their faces etched with doubt, unwilling to obey a man whose authority was crumbling before their eyes. The clerk, still seated at her desk, broke into sobs, her shoulders heaving as tears streamed down her face. "He made me do it," she choked out, her voice barely audible over the growing unrest. Her hands, trembling so violently she dropped her pen. "He said he'd ruin me, my career, my life, if I didn't destroy those files." "Silence!" Davis bellowed, but his command rang hollow, his authority reduced to ash. "None of this is admissible. You can't prove a damn thing." "Actually," Rubio interjected, his voice firm and unyielding, "it's all perfectly legal. Your own security cameras caught you shredding documents at midnight, hunched over that machine like a thief in the night. Your own phone recorded the threats you hissed at her, every venomous word preserved. And your own signature, scrawled in your unmistakable hand, authorized the transfers that tied you to this rot." Davis lunged forward, his body half over the bench, reaching desperately for Rubio's evidence folder with a guttural cry. "Give me those files. That's an order. I demand it." "Order denied." A deep, commanding voice thundered from the back of the courtroom, cutting through the chaos like a gunshot. Heads turned as a team of FBI agents strode down the center aisle, their black vests gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, their faces set in grim determination. "This court is now under federal investigation," the lead agent announced, his badge flashing briefly as he held it aloft, a symbol of authority far beyond Davis's reach. "Judge Marshall Davis, stay where you are. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Davis recoiled, stumbling back against his chair, his voice rising to a shrill, panicked screech. "You can't do this! I've got immunity! I've got connections! Powerful people who'll bury you for this!" "We know exactly who you are," the agent replied, his tone icy and precise. "Including your recent meetings with the Liberty Foundation, your offshore accounts stuffed with dirty money, and your coordinated efforts to target conservative defendants in a twisted game of judicial roulette." Davis's eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for an escape that didn't exist, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "It's a setup, a plot, a filthy conservative plot to—" "A plot?" Rubio cut in, his voice quiet but piercing, a steady anchor amid the storm. "The only plot here was your systematic abuse of power, Your Honor. Every biased ruling you handed down, every backroom deal you struck, every attempt to silence the truth, it all ends right here, right now." "You planned this," Davis accused, his finger quivering as he jabbed it at Rubio, his voice cracking with desperation. "You and your Trump cronies, you framed me, cooked this up to ruin me." "No," Rubio said, shaking his head with a faint, steely resolve. "You framed yourself, Your Honor. We didn't need to lift a finger. You did it all with your own words, your own actions. We simply gave you the stage and let you perform your own downfall. Today has confirmed everything we suspected, every dirty secret you thought you'd buried." Davis bolted upright, making a frantic dash for his chambers, his robes flapping chaotically behind him. "I'm a federal judge. You can't arrest me. I'm untouchable. I am the law." The agents moved swiftly, seizing him by the arms before he could reach the door, pinning him in place as he thrashed against their grip. "You don't get it," he screamed, his voice rising to a fevered wail. "They forced me into this, the foundation. They've got dirt on everyone, every judge, every official. If I talk, they'll—" "Now that's interesting," the lead agent said, raising an eyebrow as he stepped closer, his notepad already in hand. "Tell us more about this foundation, Your Honor. Who's pulling the strings?" Davis clamped his mouth shut, his eyes widening in horror as he realized how much he'd let slip in his blind panic, his chest heaving with shallow, ragged breaths. "I want my lawyer," he muttered, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss, his hands still trembling despite the defiance in his glare. "And when this is over, you'll all pay for this humiliation, every last one of you." In court, Marco Rubio doesn't just expose Judge Davis. He uncovers a far-reaching network of judicial corruption. Evidence reveals that 7 other federal judges received bribes on the same days as Davis, pointing to a systematic abuse of justice. Though Davis lashes out in fury, it's clear he's cornered. Court officers and the FBI move in, armed with undeniable proof of his misconduct. Rubio's calm and resolute stance doesn't just take down one man, it topples a broken system. As Davis is led out in handcuffs, shouting, "You'll never stop us," Rubio responds with quiet strength. "There will always be people like you, but there will always be people like us to stand against you." Davis's fall triggers a wave of nationwide investigations. The corrupt network crumbles, and wrongly accused citizens are exonerated. As Rubio leaves the courtroom, he reminds everyone that justice isn't something money can buy. It's something that must be defended with courage. God bless America.